tree.
Recognize your wall.
We'll be anchoring the evening music globally in a minute.
No, I thought I sat down one night and you were there for the whole half hour.
Thanks for putting that into the
You said you
There you go. Gotta feed the beast.
Let's see what the question is. We'll piece of my personal
Well, we get it sent to us from natural resources, and then we just put it.
Everybody get programmed?
I will see one actually. This is very much. We're going to start giving weekends off for the summer, but when the house is sitting and everything's in full swing,
Hi, dear. Things going well with you? Yes, you're free. I know who you are. I'm Brenda Bryant. You know us.
15 minutes of Q&A at the end of this. Oh, sorry.
Does everybody have a program? And then we can talk program? Everybody has a program?
I knew you were coming to pay when I was doing this. Hey, where's everybody at? And then I was like, oh my goodness, there's that. Thank you, sir.
Welcome, bienvenue, Jalisi, everyone, to this important event today. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Mi'kmaq, the unceded traditional territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We are privileged and thankful to be holding this event today on land that is covered by the historic treaties of peace and friendship. I would also like to acknowledge the existence of people of African descent in Nova Scotia for over 400 years. May we honor and offer gratitude to the ancestors who came before us to this land, and the commitment to not let this history be lost. I now ask everyone to please stand while Angela Cromwell sings "O Canada," followed by "Lift Every Voice and Sing the Black National Anthem." And Angela will conclude with the third selection, "By His Word," by Mahalia Jackson.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all our sons' command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, a true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Lift every voice and sing, to earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let it rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as a rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has brought us. Sing a song full of the faith that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. I have to say that this last song was going to be accompanied by guitar, but at the last minute I broke a string. So you're going to have to do this. You can sit. You can sit. I'm going to be doing this a cappella, and if you feel, the urge to clap, you go right ahead and clap along. Okay. By His word in the beginning, by His word in the beginning, by His word, He divided both the light into day and into night, and he saw that it was right by his word. Then he made the earth and sea by his word. Yes, he made the earth and sea by his word. Made the sun to rule the day, put the moon in bright array, put the stars in the Milky Way by his word. By his word, we start living by his word. By his word, we start living by his word. Over earth and sky and sea, he gave us authority, and we live abundantly by his word. 'Cause he made the earth and sea by his word. Yes, he made the earth and sea by his word. Made the sun to rule the day, put the moon in bright array, put the stars in the Milky Way by his word. By his word, he made the Sabbath by his word. By his word, he made the Sabbath by his word. Gave us his day of rest, set aside, it was best. And the Sabbath day he blessed by his word. 'Cause he made the earth and sea by his word. Yes, he made the earth and sea by his word. Made the sun to rule the day, put the moon in bright array, put the stars in the Milky Way by his word, by his word.
Thank you, Angela. That was truly amazing. Thank you. And my name is Crystal States, and I will be your MC for this event, and the Program Administration Officer with the Office of African Nova Scotian Affairs, and the co-chair of the New Glasgow Black Ella Homecoming Committee. To begin, I would like to introduce the platform guests. Ron Hallman, Chief Executive Officer of Parks Canada. The Honorable Sean Fraser, Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship, and Member of Parliament for Central Nova. Her Worship, Mayor Nancy Dix, Mayor of the Town of New Glasgow. The Honorable Dr. Mayan Francis, former Lieutenant Governor of Nova Scotia. Reverend Dr. Peter Paris, Elmer G. Homrich Hassan, Professor Emeritus, Princetown Theological Seminary, Bernard Thériault, Historic Sites and Monuments Board of Canada, representative for New Brunswick. Unfortunately, the Robbins family is not able to be with us today, but we are also joined by a few other distinguished guests, including the Premier of Nova Scotia, Tim Houston, MLA Pictou East, Pat Dunn, Minister of Communities, Culture, Tourism and Heritage, and Minister for African Nova Scotian Affairs, and the MLA Pictou Centre. Associate Deputy Minister Dwayne Provost, Percy Paris, who many of you may know, who worked on the free pardon for Viola Desmond, along with Mayan Francis, Lieutenant Governor of Nova Scotia at that time. I would now like to call on Ron Hallman, Chief Executive Officer of Parks Canada, to introduce Sean Fraser, Minister of Immigration, Refugee and Citizenship, and the Member of Parliament for Central Nova, to speak.
Thank you, Crystal. Merci. Et bonjour et bienvenue à tous. And can we just have another round of applause for Angela? That music is inspiring. You know, if language is the cradle of culture, I wonder what that makes music. It is pretty special, though. Thank you. That was very nice. Il me fait plaisir d'être ici et de vous apporter les salutations de l'équipe Parc Canada. It is a real pleasure to be here. My primary role is to introduce the minister, but before I do, I'd like to take this opportunity to share a few other comments. First, let me say that on a personal level, it is a real pleasure to be here in the home province of my wife, Carolyn, who I can assure you never tires of telling all of us and reminding us constantly that she comes from Antigonish, home of St. Francis Xavier University. And let me say on a professional level, in my role as CEO of Parks Canada, it is particularly gratifying to be here on behalf of the Parks Canada team, of whom I am very proud. And in that spirit, I hope you'll indulge me for just a moment to acknowledge and celebrate the career of one of our team members who has played a key leadership role in today's event and for whom this will be her last formal event prior to taking her very well-deserved retirement. I'm speaking of Teresa Bunbury, who has been with Parks Canada since 1981 and has worked in a wide range of roles and locations during her more than 40 incredible years of service. Where are you, Teresa? Teresa is behind you there. She has made an immense contribution to Canada and to Nova Scotia, and I hope you'll join me, yes, in thanking her and wishing her all the very best. Thank you, Teresa. So now let's turn to the reason why we're all here today. One of the central responsibilities of Parks Canada, one that we are very proud of, is to protect, share, and provide opportunities for Canadians to learn about our amazing and diverse natural and cultural heritage. Through our national program of historical commemoration, we work with partners across the country to share Canada's history, including the more difficult moments in our collective past. The National Historic Sites of Canada and designations such as the one for Viola Desmond that brings us all here today seek to tell the authentic stories of our nation. Stories that shine a light on both the positive and the negative, and yes, sometimes the tragic elements of our nation's past. I can tell you that over the past century, and driven primarily by public nominations, more than 2,200 designations of national significance have been made across Canada, demonstrating just how important it really is to Canadians that we recognize the national historic significance of the individuals, places, and events that have shaped Canada's history. C'est un honneur absolu d'aider à commémorer l'importance historique nationale de Viola Desmond, une Afro-Néo-Écossaise, et pour souligner sa bravoure face au racisme envers les Noirs. Son acte courageux de résistance a marqué un tournant dans la lutte pour les droits civils en Nouvelle-Écosse. It is an absolute honor to help commemorate the national historic significance of Viola Desmond, an African Nova Scotian, and to highlight her bravery in the face of anti-Black racism. Her courageous act of resistance was indeed a turning point in the push for civil rights in Nova Scotia, and I look forward to hearing the presentations being made by our special guests today about Ms. Desmond. Finally, before I get to my assigned task of introducing the minister, I'd like to acknowledge and thank all those who have collaborated to make this important event possible today, including the community, family representatives, all of our special guests, the Historic Sites and Monuments Board of Canada, and of course, our hardworking members of our very own Parks Canada team. And now, it is my honor to introduce our next speaker, the Honourable Sean Fraser, Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship, and Member of Parliament for Central Nova. Welcome, Minister.
So I might have to step to the side of this thing. When I sat down, I looked at that, and microphones are always a problem for us whenever I show up at community events. So, look, let me tell you how excited I am to be here today. And before I start, to our platform guests, thank you so much for joining us. Pat, wonderful to see you here as well, and in particular, members of the African Nova Scotian community who are here. This is a really, really awesome day for our community. Today we're gathering to unveil the plaque that's recognizing the historical significance of Viola Desmond. I'll tell you just a short story about my experience sort of coming to today. I used to be the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Environment and Climate Change, which is responsible for Parks Canada. And I had a conversation back in 2018 about whether we could actually designate the Roseland Theatre as a National Historic Site to commemorate Viola's act of courage. There's certain rules and regulations around what you can designate as a National Historic Site, and because the building no longer serves the same purpose and has undergone some pretty big changes, we were told at the time that it wasn't possible to actually designate the building. But some smarter people than me got together and said, well, what about the person? And I can't tell you how much more appropriate it is to honor the person that justifies our presence here today. Viola's act of courage, to have the audacity to sit in a section of the theater that was designated for white people and to be persecuted, punished, and prosecuted for doing the right thing at the time is something that I think we all now, with the benefit of hindsight and history, should never have come to pass. But through acts like this, we can advance equality, we can recognize the shameful chapters of our history. You know, I spent a lot of time now thinking in my new capacity as the Minister, not just for immigration, but for citizenship, what it means to be Canadian and what values we hold that are common as Canadians. One of those values is embedded in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, the right to be free from discrimination on the basis of the color of your skin. I can't think of anything more fundamental than that. But we have to acknowledge that we haven't always lived up to the values that we've embedded in the legal documents that we hold out to the world that make us so proud to be Canadians. But I think one of the things that makes Canada a unique place is we can acknowledge the more shameful chapters of our history and commit to do better going forward. And today, when we see this plaque, I think we'll have done at least one small thing to advance equality rights across Canada. You see, this plaque may be affixed to the side of the building where Viola took her courageous stand in defense of racial equality, but it's also going to be part of a national inventory, so people who are looking at events, people and places of historical significance across Canada will always know in perpetuity about Viola's act of courage. This to me is an essential thing. I'll draw attention to one more person in the crowd today if you'll indulge me. I brought my daughter with me here today. Her name's Molly, she's sitting over there. My wife and I started teaching Molly about Viola's story when she was right small. We've got the book, Viola Desmond Won't Be Budged, on our bookshelf, and it's something that I think is important to understand that came from our own community. If we don't share the lessons that we learned over the course of our history with the next generation, we can't hope to build a better world for the future. We've got a long way to go. There are still, every day, instances of anti-black racism that affect our communities. We've seen just recently the Prime Minister make a historic apology for the No. 2 Construction Battalion, which was founded in Pictou, Nova Scotia. And despite the fact that we see these acknowledgements, I can't help but think it was just a couple of years ago we had a young guy from Halifax, from the African Nova Scotian community visiting Parliament Hill, sat down in the cafeteria and was immediately asked questions from the security forces about what he was doing there. How did he get into the building? That doesn't happen to people who look like me. It's a real shame, but through continuing to acknowledge the shameful chapters of our history and committing to do better, and then actually taking steps that are meaningful to the community, I think we can pursue racial equality and continue to build a better future. Thank you so much for being here today. This is a pretty cool day for our community, and I'll pass the microphone over to my friend and the Mayor of New Glasgow, Nancy Dix.
Thank you, Sean. Good morning, distinguished guests, platform party, and everyone who has taken the time to join us today. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to New Glasgow as we commemorate the national historic significance of Viola Desmond. This national recognition by Parks Canada and the Historic Site and Monument Board of Canada gives us the opportunity to recognize, acknowledge, and learn from past racial injustices that have taken place in our community and across the country. This recognition also commemorates a moment in history that helped spark Canada's civil rights movement. On that November night in 1946, Viola Desmond's courage and dignity changed the course of history. Her actions, determination, and spirit would go on to help create awareness of segregation, human rights locally, provincially, nationally, and internationally. Let today's unveiling be an opportunity to discuss the continuing story of social justice, as well as a chance for everyone to learn Viola's story as a pioneering female entrepreneur. The town of New Glasgow honors Viola Desmond as a leader, social activist, entrepreneur, and champion of human rights. Her legacy has a long, lasting impact on Canadian history and will continue for future generations. On behalf of the town of New Glasgow, I welcome you all to our town, and I thank you for joining us as we pay tribute to a truly remarkable woman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Dix. I would now like to invite the Honorable Mayanne Francis, former Lieutenant Governor of Nova Scotia, to deliver a few remarks.
Thank you. I acknowledge our presence on the traditional territory of the Mi'kmaq Nation. I'm inspired by their resilience in the face of discrimination and the strength of their culture and spiritual beliefs, which has allowed them to endure so many challenges. I also acknowledge my ancestors and other warriors for their faith in God and their fight for equality and justice for Black people. They never gave up hope. I stand on their shoulders. Honorable Sean Fraser, Your Worship Nancy Diggs, Reverend Dr. Peter Paris, special guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed an honor and a pleasure to be here with you this morning to pay tribute to Viola Desmond by unveiling a plaque that will further enhance the importance of Viola's history. Viola first began her career as an educator. Even though Black people were denied entry into the teacher training school in Truro, Viola studied through correspondence course, wrote the provincial test, and obtained her certificate. She, along with other Black teachers, was permitted to teach only in Black schools. After reading an article about Madam C.J. Walker, Viola's dream developed. In the early 1900s, Madam Walker developed beauty products and beauty training schools for Black women. She was the first Black female millionaire in the United States. Viola saved her money to study at a beauty school in Montreal because the beauty schools in Halifax were restricted to whites only. Viola was a hard-working entrepreneur with a dream and a vision for success. She was unique because she was a successful Black businesswoman during a time when race relations in this province were dismal. Her determination, intelligence, and business acumen, matched by her drive to succeed in the face of racism and discrimination, is a testament to the type of person Viola was. She understood the value of hard work and empowerment. Her parents gave her a solid foundation and the support she needed to keep her dream alive. Everything changed for Viola in November 1946. As a successful businesswoman, she decided to expand her business. On November the 8th, she headed to Sydney, Cape Breton, where I was born and raised. Unfortunately, her car developed mechanical trouble. Since her car would take several hours to be repaired, she decided to go to a movie theater here in New Glasgow. Because she sat in the whites-only section in the Roseland Theatre, she was arrested and thrown into jail. It costs more to sit in the white section, but the clerk would not accept her money to pay the difference in price. Subsequently, she was wrongfully convicted of tax evasion of 1 cent. 64 years later, on April the 15th, 2010, the province of Nova Scotia, NDP government, under former Premier Darrell Dexter, issued an apology to Viola's family for her wrongful conviction. On that same day, I, the first African Nova Scotian Lieutenant Governor, on the recommendation of the Attorney General Ross Landry and Executive Council of the provincial government, I granted the Royal Prerogative of Mercy free pardon to Viola Desmond. It represented the unwavering recognition of her innocence and wrongful conviction in 1946 and rights of wrong that never should have happened. The granting of free pardon can only be executed by the Queen or her representative and granted to someone who is innocent. I said that it is impossible for the stroke of a pen and the granting of a free pardon to erase history and wipe the proverbial slate clean. The very moment in the Viola Desmond story would ensure her legacy lives on in legal journals, in newspapers, in human rights research, political science debates, and in race relations studies. There is an undeniable link that will last forever between Viola Desmond, the Crown, private and business industry, and governments, provincial, federal, municipal, and government house, and me personally, the first Black Lieutenant Governor who granted free pardon to an innocent Black woman. The use of the Royal Prerogative of Mercy free pardon for Viola Desmond was historic, and the significance of both our connection cannot be denied or ignored. It is like the circle had been completed between the promise of her brave stand for equality and social justice and my appointment to the vice-regal office. The circle is a confirmation for future generations to understand the importance of inclusiveness that ensures our history of exclusion, racism, and discrimination is never repeated. Unfortunately, we will never know what heights Viola would have taken her business. Did that cruel act on November the 8th, 1946, and its aftermath break her spirit and crush her dreams? There is sufficient research that points to the negative impact of racism on one's mental and physical health. Viola was attempting to grow her business in 1946. Imagine for a moment the empire she could have built by continuing to grow her business. Imagine how her successful business could have contributed to the economy and cultural fabric of our province and our country. Imagine the number of girls, especially Black girls, and yes, Black boys, she could have inspired to become entrepreneurs. Much has already been written about Viola, and I would suggest reading the books written by Graham Reynolds and her sister, the late Wanda Robson. Her story will continue to unfold. We are here this morning to acknowledge her greatness and the effect that she has had on race relations in Nova Scotia and Canada by unveiling a plaque of dynamic, brave, courageous, and successful entrepreneur who was the catalyst for tearing down written and unwritten policies of segregation, discrimination, and racism in Canada. Today, August the 12th, 2022, is another page in the history and the story of Viola Desmond and her sister, the late Wanda Robson, because Wanda, according to her husband who sent me a note, said she requested several years ago for the establishment of either a plaque or monument here in New Glasgow to recognize Viola's courage for her action. She also sent another letter to New Glasgow about the injustice that happened to her beloved sister, Viola. Thank you to the Historic Sites and Monument Board of Canada, the federal government, for this important historical significance of the past, present, and future about Viola Desmond. And thank you for honoring her beloved sister's request. As Joseph Robson, Wanda's husband, said, if Wanda was still alive, she would be so pleased with it. I would say her spirit is here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Francis. I'm not sure if you and George Eliot had a conversation, but George Eliot Clark, poet, playwright, and literary critic, is unable to attend today. However, he sent a poem penned by him entitled On Political Economy, or The Ballad of Viola Desmond. So George, if you're watching and listening with us, I hope that I can convey your message through spoken word. That's a big feat. Excuse me. On Political Economy, or The Ballad of Viola Desmond. It's impossible proof the $10 bill staring her face demonstrate crime pays. But first, the heroine must holler. Get walled in prison while ass-like law brays, because she didn't pay the penny tax required to plunk where Caucasians folk sit in that polarizing cinema blacks in 1946 were deemed unfit to share the same seating at the Roseland Theatre in New Glasgow, and got told some roles are whites only. Who could withstand? Voila, Viola, valuable as gold. Desmond was a beautician, but her change wasn't cosmetic. She couldn't give 2 cents to back whites' blacklist. That was strange. It wasn't how most colored had to live. So Nova Scotia swiftly saw her jailed, tried her, broadcast her guilt, not for breaking Jim Crow rules, but only because she failed to pay 1 cent the province was talking. To support white only, rules aplenty, as if New Scotland were South Africa. Viola, damned, got dinged $6 and $20. That's her beauty spot, I tell ya. Her 2 cents added up, made sense. It made change begin to happen 9 years before Rosa Parks sparked the Civil Rights Crusade stateside, a century past Civil War. As an entrepreneur, she sought value and profit in beauty. Sis Desmond did, but she courted justice because it's true. Beauty turns ugly where justice is hid. Her bill is disappointingly smooth, eh? One can't feel the scars and scrapes and scabs that she suffered to bring about a better day, whose dawn could usher in equality. Still, she's the first Canuck femme and person of color to see her face integrate Canadian currency. Partisan of justice, ponder her interest rate. From 2 cents to $10, an increase of 50,000%. Also, note her royal pardon. Miracles near cease. Royal Mint, be Viola Desmond now. George Eliot Clark. And now, I would like to invite the Reverend Dr. Peter Pears to speak on the impact.
Good morning, distinguished guests and everybody. It is an honor to speak to you on this auspicious occasion here in my hometown of New Glasgow, where I was born and raised, as were my parents and siblings. Several of the latter are here today. Now, it has only been in recent decades that our hometown, New Glasgow, has honored its Black citizens. Despite that long delay, we are all most grateful for this event because it publicly acknowledges our shared humanity, which unfortunately has not always been affirmed. For example, when I was growing up, there were few places here in our downtown district where my people were welcomed. Yet after many years of accommodating to racial exclusion, we gradually inched our way into public acceptance. Consequently, I've known the first persons who graduated from our high school, the first to be admitted to the nursing training program at the Aberdeen Hospital, the first to be employed as clerks here in downtown stores, the first allowed to teach in our public schools, the first to work as secretaries in downtown establishments, the first to join some of the downtown churches, the first to be a member of the town council, and so forth. All of those events occurred quietly after the 1960s and caused no public disturbance because New Glasgow was simply catching up with the ethos of the post-civil rights era that had dominated the news in the United States throughout the decade between 1955 and 1965, in addition to the decolonization of Africa, which increased the United Nations organization by over 60 nations in a very short period of time. More than a decade before Rosa Parks was arrested in Montgomery, Alabama, for refusing to give up her bus seat to a white man, 76 years ago, a young Black businesswoman, as you just heard, passing through New Glasgow on November the 8th, 1946, became an unintentional symbol of racial injustice on this spot in our town. Her story is now well known, and only a few details of which I will mention here. Suffice it to say, however, that she was forced to spend the night in jail because she had refused to sit in the segregated part of the theater as required arbitrarily by the management, forced to appear in court the following morning and pay a penalty. Her refusal to sit in the segregated section was not a protest against segregation per se, but was due simply to her short-sightedness and inability to see the screen from the balcony. The NAACP in Halifax appealed her case, which she lost, and 64 years later, in 2010, she was granted a free pardon by Nova Scotia's Lieutenant Governor, Mayanne Francis, along with an apology by Premier Darrell Dexter. In 2016, Desmond's picture appeared on the Canadian $10 bill, and many other posthumous honors soon followed, including today's honor here at Ground Zero in New Glasgow. I was 13 years old when Viola Desmond's event occurred, and I clearly remember hearing my parents and others discussing the incident and lamenting the injustice inflicted on such a fine young businesswoman. Needless to say, perhaps, while not knowing her personally, we here in Nova Scotia, particularly those in the Black community, have always loved Viola Desmond because she became a visible public symbol of the wrongful action of racial discrimination that was once pervasive in our town and throughout our province. Her courageous action was publicized by the renowned Dr. Carrie Best, who had experienced a similar incident 5 years earlier in the company of her young son, Calvert. And thus she gave wide coverage to the event in her newly founded Clarion newspaper. And let me quickly say that Desmond's appeal was undertaken by the NAACP of Nova Scotia under the guidance of a former New Glasgow native, Mrs. Pearline Oliver, and her husband, Dr. William P. Oliver. Undoubtedly, we here in New Glasgow are all grateful for this public celebration of Viola Desmond's action and today's making of a covenant between the town of New Glasgow and our people to amend the wrongs of the past with the hope that our town has buried all the ghosts of racial injustice once and for all. Let me conclude by saying that whenever members of other races, religions, genders, or nationalities are treated unequally, the whole community is harmed because the community is denied the inevitable contributions that the excluded ones would make to the whole community. I pray that God will grant us courage to build a future completely void of all the ugliness of racial injustice, so that we will never, ever again hear the words, "We do not admit you people here." Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pears, for your impactful statement and words. And finally, our last speaker of the day, would like to invite Bernard Thériault, member of the Historic Sites and Monument Board of Canada, to speak, and he will also read the plaque text.
Thank you, MC, Mayor of New Glasgow, Madam Dix, Minister, distinguished guests, friends and family members of Viola Desmond, Mesdames et Messieurs, bonne journée. It is a great pleasure and honor to participate in this important event today on behalf of the Historic Site and Monument Board of Canada. As the New Brunswick representative on the HMSBC board, I'm here today to fill in for the Nova Scotia representative that is supposed to be appointed very shortly. Greetings and thanks to Dr. Nicole Needby, who represented Nova Scotia on the board for the last 5 years and was involved in this activity. As well, the Canadian government and the HSMBC had put in place many measures aiming at correcting injustices, racism, and discrimination that so many visible minorities have been victims of over the years. Je suis également très ému d'avoir pu participer au nom de la Commission des lieux et monuments historiques à 3 cérémonies récemment de dévoilement de plaques reconnaissant des personnages et des événements reliés à l'émancipation de Canadiens d'origine africaine. I also feel very privileged to have witnessed within 2 months 3 plaques unveiling recognizing the contribution of the Canadian African community in the edification of this country. 2 months ago, on June the 5th, on a ranch outside Calgary, Parks Canada recognized the contribution of the Black African descent John Ware in the development of the western part of this country. John Ware, after being disenslaved, moved in the prairies to work as a cowboy. Despite the challenges and the discrimination, he rapidly became one of the best cowboys and later on one of the best ranchers this country has known. In Pictou, on July the 5th, I also took part in the ceremony recognizing the contribution of the Construction Battalion No. 2, composed entirely of black soldiers during World War I. As for the ceremony we're having today here, this is a testimony of the resilience and the courage of a person who, by her own conviction, made a difference in the life of hundreds of thousands of Canadians. At this moment, I would like to bring a few remarks about the hero of the day, Viola Desmond. Those remarks are from Graham Reynolds, that cannot be here today. Today's ceremony honoring Viola Desmond as National Historic Person and the unveiling of a commemorative plaque in New Glasgow mark a very important milestone. The historic plaque is a permanent reminder of the fateful day of November the 8th, 1946, when Viola Desmond courageously challenged the practice of racial segregation and at the Roseland Theatre. When it comes to the injustice of the past, I think Canadians often suffer from a convenient form of collective amnesia. This was certainly the case with Madame Desmond and the Roseland Theatre incident. Although Viola Desmond's courage, action, and wrongful arrest provided a catalyst in the struggle for civil rights in Nova Scotia, public attention surrounding the incident was very short-lived, and the memory of those events quickly faded from public consensus. Over 6 decades later, in 2010, the story of Viola Desmond received public attention once again when the government of Nova Scotia posthumously granted her a free pardon. The historic action acknowledged Viola's innocence and righted a gross judicial injustice. In the 11th year since the government of Nova Scotia issued his pardon, Viola Desmond has risen from historical obscurity to becoming a national civil rights icon. Her face now appears on our national currency, and her story has resonated throughout Canada and even beyond. Today's ceremony has very special meaning because it is the culmination of this extraordinary journey which began here in New Glasgow 76 years ago. The fact that we are gathered here today to honor Viola Desmond as a National Historic Person is largely the result of a small group of dedicated individuals and perhaps above all to the steadfast efforts of the late Wanda Robson, Viola's youngest sister. For more than 2 decades, Wanda had engaged in a concerted campaign to raise public awareness and correct the injustice done to her sister. She wrote many letters and was also a frequent guest on local and national media, and she gave numerous talks to community organizations and schools across the province. One important message which I think we should all take away from today's events is how the action of a single individual can effect positive change and even after the course of history. In commemorating Viola Desmond's act of courage, which helped bring an end to the practice of racial segregation in Nova Scotia, we should also remember Wanda Robson for the significant role she played in raising public awareness by telling her sister's story to anyone who would listen. I believe the example set by both these remarkable women provide a powerful lesson of inspiration and hope for making Canada a more just society. Merci beaucoup pour votre attention. Thank you very much for the invitation I received here. And I would like to end up maybe by souhaiter une bonne fête nationale des Acadiens qui habitent beaucoup cette région ici, puisque les célébrations commencent bientôt. Merci, thank you very much. I have another job to do. It was unfair. I think I had more work to do than others on this ceremony today. We would like to complete the thing by reading the text that will be open there. Well, I'll go fast. I know that rain is just coming up. In 1946, Halifax, businesswoman Viola Desmond confronted the racism that African Nova Scotians routinely faced when she refused to move from her seat in the whites-only section of the Roseland Theatre. For this, she was arrested, jailed, and fined. Her unsuccessful appeal to the Supreme Court of Nova Scotia attracted broad attention. It confirmed for African Canadians that the law did not protect them and sparked their activism. This month's resistance to racial discrimination was an important milestone in Canada's human rights history and an inspiration for the civil rights movement. En 1946, la femme d'affaires de Halifax, Viola Desmond, confronte le racisme auquel les Africo-néo-écossais font face en prenant un siège dans la section réservée aux Blancs du cinéma Roseland. Elle est arrêtée, emprisonnée pour la nuit et reçoit un appel. Son appel rejeté par la Cour, elle attire l'attention du public. Cela confirme aux Afro-Canadiens que la loi ne les protège pas et éveille leur activisme. La résistance des Desmond à la discrimination raciale est un moment clé de l'histoire des droits de la personne au pays et une inspiration pour le mouvement des droits civils du Canada. I'm done. Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Tyrrell. It is now my great pleasure to invite Minister Fraser, the Honourable Diane Francis, Dr. Peter Pears, and Bernard Tiro to unveil the Historical Site and Monuments Board of Canada plaque. I would ask that the speakers remain for a few official photos, and before ending, I would be remiss if I did not thank a few of the organizers for the event today. Key partners were Parks Canada in putting on the event, were the Black Cultural Centre of Nova Scotia, the New Glasgow Black Gala Homecoming for providing time on their agenda and to hold the event for the town of New Glasgow, who have been generous in their support of the event. This plaque unveiling concludes the official part of the day's ceremony. Media are invited to remain for photos and questions while guests may make their way over to the outdoor deck or probably inside where light refreshments will be served. Thank you everyone for coming out today, and I hope you will make some time to stop by Viola's, wait for the plaque, and install it. For the reception, it will be held inside